Two friends set out to relax after a long work week of work. Chidi and Tunde, they arrived at a bar and ordered drinks, and they finished it and called out to the woman who had attended to them earlier, "Madam, bring more drinks. Let's get high." Tunde shouted loudly. It was clear he was getting drunk, and Chidi was right next to him, his hand resting on the lap of a light-skinned lady they had picked up at a junction nearby. There were many hawkers along the street that night, but they had chosen this particular junction. According to them, it was where the best women could be found. They managed to haggle the price down for the two girls, one for Chidi, the other for Tunde. Afterward, they went to the bar and started drinking themselves into a stupor. The woman brought 4 more bottles as Tunde had requested. They quickly downed the beer placed in front of them. "Oh baby, what's your name?" Tunde asked the girl sitting beside him. She was darker than the one Chidi had picked, and not as attractive, but to Tunde, she was the most beautiful girl alive. The alcohol was clearly taking effect. "My name isn't important. Let's just go to the house," the girl replied sarcastically. She was already feeling tipsy too. "See, this girl is acting hard to get," Tunde said aloud. "Don't worry, we'll be leaving soon. And I'll make sure I take everything from you, every bit of it," Tunde responded with a smirk, already imagining what was about to happen. Meanwhile, Chidi was kissing the other girl, ignoring her protests. "Girl, you're sweeter than sugarcane," Chidi shouted while she tried to push him away. "Madam, bring more bottles." Chidi screamed again. Inside the bar owner was speaking to her salesgirls. "Madam, are you sure these people can pay for all the drinks they're ordering?" one of the girls asked. "Madam, it's true. We've never seen faces like these around here before," another girl added. "Relax, you all. Just serve them whatever they want. They'll pay. No one drinks here without paying," the owner, known as Madam Point and Kill, boasted. "Madam, where's the drink?" Chidi yelled from outside. The girls rushed to attend to them. Eventually, the bill came and was settled. They paid without complaint and left the bar. The night was far gone. It was a Saturday. They returned to their mansion and went into one of the rooms. Without wasting time, they got straight to what they called the business of the day. The sound of people racing to an early morning mass woke up the two people who were sleeping in a 4-bedroom apartment inside the fancy bus. Tunde was the first to wake up, and then Chidi. They didn't know where they were at first. "Hey, where are we?" Tunde asked Chidi, his pal. It was clear that he was still hungover. "We're home," Chidi yelled like a crazy person. "But from where I'm sitting, this place doesn't look like a house," Tunde said as he walked toward the exit of the fancy bus. "You might be under the influence, and it appears that you are imagining things." Chidi said, "This is our house inside our compound." Tunde found out it wasn't just his imagination playing tricks on him when he came to the exit and glanced outside. Everything around them was bright and lovely, and all the animals, big and small, were looking at them. He ran back onto the bus to tell Chidi what he had found. He spotted Chidi peering through the window like he had seen a ghost. At that point, he realized something was wrong. "Hey, you're naked?" Chidi spoke to him in a low voice. "Even you?" Tunde answered and started to laugh silently. They quickly looked for their pants, but they couldn't find them anywhere. A small child who had come out to pee in the early morning heard snoring from the fancy bus after the two hackers stole their money, but they didn't know it. He was a naughty lad, so he slowly walked over to the fancy bus and noticed the two adults sleeping peacefully in a corner inside. He proceeded softly and picked up all of their garments, anything he could find. The small guy couldn't find their pants and singlet because it was still early in the morning. They were all the way to the right. Tunde and Chidi looked hard for their pants, but they couldn't find them. They were lucky that the boy didn't steal their underpants. They would have felt pretty bad about themselves if the boy had stolen their underpants. The two companions put on their undies and dashed out of the fancy bus like two wild rabbits hunting for their hole before anyone could shout, "Jack Robinson." They ran for almost an hour before taking a sharp left that led to their neighborhood. Then they slowed down to catch their breath and think about how foolish they had been. "Hey, are you saying those girls just took our money and left?" Chidi asked when they stopped completely under a mango tree that was only a few yards from the bachelor they were in. "They were so rude that they even took our shirts and pants," Tunde said in a rough voice. Chidi laughed and remarked, I'm just glad they didn't take our boxers and singlets. Since we're talking about God, when did you last go to church? Chidi asked Tunde. I don't remember. Chidi scratched his head and said, Man. He also scratched his hands and feet and said, there were mosquitoes all over that bus. It's not a small thing. Tunde said something. He was also experiencing the effects of the mosquito bites. But those girls think they can just use us like that, he said. Don't pay attention to those idiots. The only thing they got was strafing and the food we ate at the pub yesterday. Chidi said, the money was fake, and then Tunde burst out laughing. Come on, let's get out of here before someone sees us in these clothes. That would be insane. Chidi said more, laughing again. Man, we were supposed to go to church today and thank God for the freedom he gave us. Tunde said this after they had dined and taken a bath. That's right. Chidi said yes. But which church should we go to? We'll just walk around and stop at any church that makes sense. Chidi said, that's a good idea. After that, they got dressed and walked out of the house. After roaming the street for almost an hour, they saw a signpost that read, The Sanctuary of Praise. Very good. I think this one will make sense. Chidi whispered to Tunde. And there will be fine girls in this church. Tunde chuckled. With that, they started following the sign to the exact location of the church. They took the first right, following the arrows placed at every bend to guide first-time visitors to the church. After turning 2 more bends, they came face to face with the church. Wow! Chidi screamed unconsciously. Oh my world! Tunde joined in the exclamation. The 2 friends folded their hands and looked at the church with their mouths wide open. They had never seen a church that exuded class like this one before them. The gate of the church was wide open. From the gate to the church auditorium, there were 2 rows of flowers. There was a small roundabout a few meters before the auditorium, with flowers planted around it too. There was an N-shaped flower arrangement crossing from one side of the gate to the other. Even the door of the church had a similar N-shaped flower arrangement, extending about 10 meters from the church door. The church also had a massive parking lot with cars filling the place. They moved closer to the church door. The door opened on its own, which made the 2 of them run back in fright. Che! See the American wonder! One of them shouted in awe. They composed themselves and approached the door again. This time, when the door opened on its own, they did not run back. They stepped into the auditorium and were even more thrilled by the interior than they had been by the exterior. They would have stood there the whole time if not for the timely intervention of one of the church officials, who tapped them on their shoulders. Actually, the lady had been standing in front of them for about a minute, but because these 2 were so lost in the splendor of the environment, they did not notice someone standing in front of them. So, the lady had to tap them to get their attention. She led them to a seat in the back row of the church. The interior of the church was magnificent, to say the least. The seats were arranged in rows like a theater. The church had a slope similar to the one at. It had white marble walls, and the decorations were simply done in white and green since it was Independence Day. The choir was dressed in white suits with green ties and was seated on the left-hand side of the church. The ministers were also dressed in white suits. All the instruments were positioned close to the choir. The church had several instruments, a motif piano, a Yamaha Cork 7-octave piano, a cello, violin, bass guitar, tuning fork, drum sets, trumpets, saxophone, and more. The stand resembled an orchestra stand. They were distracted by a voice coming from the walls. Before they could figure out what was happening, man, where is this sound coming from? I don't see any speakers. Tunde called his friend's attention to his discovery. Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now here, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sake, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, nor shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. Chidi and Tunde heard the man on the altar saying, This must be the man in charge of this church, they thought. Bring out your tithes and offerings. You know that they which sow sparingly will reap sparingly, and they which sow bountifully will also reap bountifully. So, package your offerings very well and put on your dancing shoes. Choir, please give us a danceable song and let's rock to the glory of the Lord, the man concluded with a smile. These two had never been to church before. They were just passing by when some breeze blew them into the church. But what we don't know is the nature of the breeze that blew them into the church. The heart is like an elastic band that can be stretched. The thing is, when the heart is stretched by an idea, it will never return to its original position. Since the idea of robbing the church entered Chidi's mind, his life had never returned to normal. He sat on their 12-inch mattress, arms crossed, deeply lost in thought, so much so that he didn't even notice when Tunde walked into the room. It wasn't until Tunde coughed to get his attention that he realized someone was in the room. They lived in a bachelor's house, a house made of wood. The environment was not a conducive one to live in. The compound was just like a final bus stop for refuse. When the rain was heavy, the flood would carry materials of all kinds and deposit them in the compound. Little wonder the place smelled terrible. Their room was a bit small and almost empty, except for the mattress, a small stove by the corner of the room, some plates scattered on the floor, a little transistor radio, the kind Abraham Lincoln used when he was yet to see the White House, and, of course, 2 Ghana must-go bags. Chidi looked up from his sitting position to behold his friend's worried face. He knew that something bad was troubling Tunde. How did it go? He asked. Earlier, Tunde had received a call from an anonymous caller requesting to see him immediately. There's a serious problem, Tunde replied. When I got to the place the man who called me directed, he said that he is a doctor and that a woman at the hospital gave him my number. He said the woman had been there for about 3 days now. I requested to see the woman. When we got to the hospital, I saw my mom lying on the hospital bed. She had become a shadow of herself. The doctor says she has kidney stones, and I need to bring $500K for them to start the treatment. Guy, I'm so dead. Tunde burst into fresh tears, aside from the ones he had shed at the hospital. Take it easy, man. Put yourself together. Chidi comforted his friend, patting him on the back. I also have some sad news too, he added with a drop in his countenance. What kind of sad news? Tunde wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. My father just passed on, Chidi said calmly. He was tired of weeping and worrying. Since his friend left and that call came in, he had done nothing but weep and worry. I'm so sorry about that. It's okay. It's not your fault that the old man decided to pass on at this time when things are so dry, Chidi said. The only thing left now is for the living to take up responsibility, he added. So what do you intend to do now? Tunde asked. I'm thinking of robbing that church with a toy gun, Chidi replied. Are you out of your mind? Do you know what you're saying? Tunde screamed. Do you want your mother to die like my father did? Chidi replied. No, God forbid. Tunde shrugged. Then you need to use your head. Chidi started. But it's not proper to steal from God, Tunde countered. They live in big houses while their members live in thatched houses and swim in poverty. Is it good for the ushers to enrich themselves with church funds? My friend, open your eyes and see things clearly. That fund was meant for people like us, but these people won't just let it come to us, Chidi concluded. But how do you want to carry out your mission of stealing God's money? Tunde exhaled. Stop calling it God's money. For all I know, God is in heaven, and they don't use naira or dollars up there, Chidi cut in. So how do you intend to carry out this mission without getting caught? Tunde asked. We will go to that church tonight, because by tomorrow, they might take the money to the bank. I saw that man carrying all that money into one room at the back of the church. I guess that's where the money is kept before being transferred to the bank. Chidi laid out his well-planned strategy. What about the security men? Tunde asked, now getting interested in the whole deal. I know where we can get in unnoticed. Trust me on that, Chidi smiled. Man, you're the baddest. You've drafted everything out. Tunde hailed. The time was fast approaching for the operation to take place. The two friends were getting ready for their mission, which Chidi had titled Mission Impossible 4, after mapping out the church in his mind. The time is now 8:30 p.m. We need to get ready to avoid any unnecessary delays, Chidi said, checking the wristwatch he had been wearing for the 100th time since dusk. I'm coming. Let me put the tools we need for the mission in the bag, Tunde replied. He was carrying a black school bag filled with a pair of scissors, a hammer, a knife, a rope, 2 rechargeable flashlights, a saw blade, and other items. They were both wearing black coats and black Timberland boots to match. Chidi handed Tunde one of the toy guns he was holding. Man, I'm scared about this operation. Tunde voiced his fears. I've already told you, this operation must succeed. Even the angels are on our side for this. Don't forget that heaven helps those who take the first step, Chidi patted his friend on the back. What if they discover that this gun is a toy? That would mean we're finished, Tunde scratched his head in confusion. Man, you're a scaredy cat. Are you going to tell them it's a toy gun? Chidi shook his head in disbelief. They won't know it's a toy gun. Let's go. Chidi walked out of the house, closely followed by Tunde. In no time, they arrived at the point where they had first seen the signpost of the church. Don't worry, after today, they'll change the name to Sanctuary of Confusion. Chidi smiled after looking at the signpost, which stood tall like a gallant soldier. What did you say? Tunde asked, looking around to see if anyone was watching. I didn't say anything. I was just telling the signpost that they're going to change its name to Sanctuary of Confusion, Chidi replied with a wide grin. They took the same route they used in the morning, but this time, they weren't looking at the signposts since Chidi had the map in his head. They arrived at the gate of the church and noticed that the lights were on. Tunde was about to comment, but Chidi quickly covered his mouth with his palm. From now on, we'll use the code of communication we learned earlier. No more talking, do you understand? Chidi whispered in his ear. Tunde nodded to show that he understood. Chidi allowed a minute to pass before carefully removing his hand from Tunde's mouth. Tunde shot him a wicked look. We'll have to go through this gutter. I think it leads to an opening in the fence, and we can use that to enter the church compound. But Tunde was pulled into the gutter before he could finish his statement. They crawled through the gutter toward the back of the church. They discovered that there was an opening in the fence of the church, which allowed water to drain into the gutter when the floodwaters were high. The only issue was that the circular opening was covered with iron rods arranged in a mat-like pattern. Give me the saw blade, Chidi whispered to Tunde. Tunde handed him the saw blade and watched as he sawed through the iron rods one by one. When Chidi grew tired of sawing, he handed the saw to Tunde to continue from where he had left off. Finally, they succeeded in cutting through all the iron rods and crawled quietly into the church compound. That work was heavy. Chidi covered Tunde's mouth before he could complete the statement. Do you want to ruin this mission for me? Chidi whispered harshly. Who's there? Someone called out, flashing a light in their direction. I say, who is there? The voice asked again. The security guard was on patrol when he heard some noise at the back of the church and decided to check it out. He walked closer to the source of the sound. The security man flashed his flashlight and inspected the area. When he was sure that there was no one in the vicinity, he turned to go back to his post. He had barely taken 5 steps when he felt something cold pressed to the back of his head. He halted in his tracks like someone on a military parade ground. Don't think about moving or screaming, because if you do, you'll be as good as dead. Chidi whispered as he warned him. When the voice called out from behind them, Chidi and Tunde quickly hid behind the MZ soundproof generator that was running at that time of the night. Tunde almost gave away their position, if not for the fact that Chidi quickly pointed the gun at the security guard, while Tunde pulled out a rope from the black bag he was carrying and tied the man up. After tying the man up, Chidi inspected the rope to ensure there was no chance of the man escaping. They took the bunch of keys from the security guard's trouser pocket and locked him in one of the rooms after taping his mouth shut. The 2 security men were startled to their bones when they saw Deacon Emeka standing just a meter away from them. He had a wide grin on his face, with the kind of posture one uses when caught between seriousness and unseriousness. The 2 security men quickly dropped to their knees, begging Deacon Emeka not to expose them, claiming it was the work of the devil and that such a thought would never cross their minds again. Deacon Emeka, please, don't be angry. I was just doing my patrol, minding my own business, when this man started talking all those things to me. It's not like I wanted to follow him and do what he said, Tunde pleaded. It's the devil standing there, telling me all those many things. It's not my normal mind that made me think like that. It's the handiwork of the devil, the first man replied, shaking like a leaf in the harmattan wind. Meanwhile, Deacon Emeka was just standing there, speechless, staring at them like someone who had just arrived in Paris and was lost in the splendor of the surroundings. The two kept confessing their sins before him, but unknown to them, Deacon Emeka hadn't heard a word of their previous conversation and was completely lost. It seems like the two of you were planning something fishy. Deacon Emeka finally found his voice and looked around for a better seat. Not finding one, he sat on the table in their mini-office. The second security man quickly responded. It took all of Deacon Emeka's energy to suppress the laughter that was threatening to escape his lips. That's not what I meant, Deacon Emeka managed to say amidst his laughter. What I mean is that the two of you are suspects, he added. We don't want to go to prison, they echoed in unison. Then you'll have to tell me what you're planning, or you'll go to prison, Deacon Emeka replied. Even the first security man, who had thought his heart was as hard as stone, was beginning to melt like butter under Deacon Emeka's threat. They had no choice but to include Deacon Emeka in the plans they were discussing. That's a very good idea, Deacon Emeka replied after hearing their plans. The two security men exchanged glances, their mouths, eyes, and noses wide open. The sweat pouring from their bodies had tripled. They could hardly believe what they had just heard. You mean, they echoed, their disbelief growing. They finalized the plan for 10 p.m., which was less than an hour away from that time. Part of the plan was to steal the key from the pastor's office. When they arrived at the pastor's office, they discovered that the door was open. They went in and found that the key to the safe wasn't there. Their curiosity led them to check the safe. They were shocked to find the pastor packing money from the safe into a briefcase. Their arrival was a huge shock to the pastor. He pleaded with them not to tell the church members, and they agreed that all the money in the safe would be shared equally among them. Deacon Emeka opened the door and found two strangers in the strong room. The church administration doesn't allow even deacons who aren't involved in recording or managing financial duties to enter the strong room, let alone strangers invading it. He was about to scream when Tunde and Chidi, out of fright, pointed their guns at him and commanded him to keep quiet. They dragged him into the room and instructed him to kneel down and raise his hands. Where is the key to the safe? Tunde asked him in a low tone. The man refused to answer the question. If you don't cooperate with us, you will have yourself to blame. But if you cooperate fully, we will leave with a smile on our faces, Chidi added. Deacon Emeka, being an Igbo man, was seriously planning how best to negotiate with them. It took him some time to register that he had not actually received the key from the pastor. Brother, please, I didn't collect the key from my pastor, Deacon Emeka confessed. What did you say? They replied in unison. My pastor is the one holding the key to the safe. They are having a meeting upstairs. He told me to go collect the money and bring it to the meeting, but I forgot to collect the key from him, Deacon Emeka replied, shaking. Drops of sweat were forming all over his body. How many people are in this building right now? They asked him quietly. I don't really know. The choir is having their practice in the church auditorium right now, Deacon Emeka answered. Tunde and Chidi exchanged a glance. We're in for a tougher task than we expected, Tunde whispered to Chidi. Mr. Man, take us to the conference room where the pastors and deacons are having their meeting right now, they commanded Deacon Emeka. The pastor and his ministerial team had been waiting for Deacon Emeka to return from the strong room for more than 20 minutes, with no sign of him or the money. They were considering sending someone else to check on him when the door swung open, and Deacon Emeka, along with two armed men, entered. They pointed the guns at the pastor and his assistant before issuing their instructions. Everyone, take out your phones, switch them off, and place them on the table. Don't keep any phone with you, or you'll have yourself to blame for disobedience, they instructed. All the people in the room, including the pastor and his assistant, switched off their phones and placed them on the table. Tunde went from seat to seat, collecting their phones and placing them into the school bag he had with him. After collecting and searching the phones to ensure there were no electronics left, they gave further instructions. Pastor, you'll have to accompany me to the strong room while the rest of the ministers stay here with my guy. No excuses, full cooperation is what we need now. So, stand to your feet, Pastor, Chidi commanded. Together, they went to the strong room and returned after a while to declare that the safe was empty, which meant someone had stolen the money. A few hours before the discovery, what the fuck man, I'm tired of this kind of life. The security man sat with his arms crossed on the small stool in the small room located at the gate, which served as his office. Just then, one of his colleagues walked into the office and found him in that position. What's your problem this time? He said, looking at his wristwatch that had stopped working even before Abraham Lincoln was elected President of America. The first man didn't answer the question but continued in his personal meditation. It's 8 p.m. Instead of you patrolling around the church premises to check for any unusual movement, you're sitting here with your arms crossed like someone whose father just died, the second man added, guessing the time. Sit down, let me tell you something. There's something that's been bothering me and I've been trying to reason it out, the first security man replied, pointing to the other stool for him to sit down. Anything you want to say it fast. Don't you know the pastors and deacons will soon come for their meeting? It wouldn't be good if they come and see us both here, the second man replied. I'll try to make it quick, the first man responded, while the second man sat down on the vacant stool and turned his full attention to his colleague. You know we've been serving as security men for this church for almost 15 years now? The first security man started. That's true, but how does that become your problem? The second man interrupted. Are you waiting for me to die before you bury me? The first man replied, while the second man adjusted his seat and gave him a suspicious look. For all those years we've worked here, tell me what you've achieved? Me? Didn't I buy a brand new motorcycle last year? I'm still the first and only security man to get a motorcycle for this church, the second man replied, beating his chest proudly and smiling. You're an idiot. It's just a motorcycle that your mates are driving, right? Open your eyes, the first man said in a harsh tone. To demonstrate that his eyes were open, the second security man used his hands to widen his eyes. I've told you you're a big-time fool. He spelt it out and continued, what I mean is, you need to open your eyes. I've been opening my eyes with Ogogoro and Monkey Tail every morning and evening, the second man replied, looking confused. Is that how I'm supposed to tell you that these people are cheating us? Look at Deacon Emeka, who came to this church and bought a big car and is enjoying it with his family, but we, who've been here for so long, don't have anything. Even paying our children's school fees is a problem, the first security man said with a serious look on his face. Whistled loudly, you're right. Even my wife tells me the same thing, but I told her to keep quiet, the second security man replied, adjusting his seat even closer. Don't you see that your wife sees things more clearly than you? He replied. Don't try to insult me just because I'm trying to reason with you. The second man replied angrily and was about to stand up when his colleague pleaded with him not to get angry, saying it was a mistake. What I mean is your wife. He was interrupted by the sound of someone clearing his throat behind them.